The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments tomorrow in a key case that involves abortion rights. The disputes over the clash between Idaho's near total ban and a federal law that requires Medicare-participating hospitals to provide emergency abortion care to women whose health is at serious risk. Health policy reporter for the Associated Press, Amanda Seitz, joins us now. She wrote an article, an incredible article, about how emergency rooms across the United States are refusing to treat pregnant women. One of these, this just stuck with me here. This woman you spoke with, health law and policy professor, says pregnant patients have, quote, become radioactive to emergency departments, unquote, in states with extreme abortion restrictions. They're so scared of a pregnant patient that the emergency medicine staff won't even look. They just want these people gone. That's how urgent it is for women and how concerned hospitals are in these states about the potential legal risk.
Yeah, and what we found, we were able to get back some federal records, complaints, pregnancy-related complaints against hospitals, is that the severity and the number of complaints really went up after states started enacting these abortion bans. And we found cases where medical staff wouldn't look at these pregnant patients when they walked in. They were asking for help, and they were turned away and told to drive elsewhere in some cases.
Do we get a sense that the doctors, the front desk staffs at these places are being told by somebody in the back room, just for the sake of our legal risk, avoid these at all costs? Or are they personally concerned, given the changes in law, that they could get swept up into something they don't want to be involved in?
Well, unfortunately, the documents don't tell us the motives necessarily that some of these doctors or medical staff had in turning away the patients. But what we do know is that there was a lot of confusion swirling for doctors once these abortion bans were enacted, and that there continues to be some confusion and difficulties in treating these patients when they do present at ERs. Some of the doctors in Idaho have said that they've had to actually airlift patients out of the state to get care because of a new abortion ban that started in January. They've had several instances of that.
So there's going to be a lot of conversation at the High Court tomorrow about something known as EMTALA, E-M-T-A-L-A. What is that? And how is it potentially being used by the Biden administration to penalize these hospitals that aren't treating women?
So EMTALA is the federal law that requires that every patient that presents in an emergency room get a medical screening exam. And if the hospital is not able to provide resources or services to them, that they at least stabilize that patient before transferring them out. And the Biden administration has argued that Idaho's state abortion ban, which does not allow an exemption for the health of the mother, is in direct conflict with the federal law that requires these emergency rooms to treat patients in medical emergencies.
Right. They don't have the health exception. They have only a life exception in Idaho. And then Idaho is arguing, well, this same law says we also have to account for the life of the baby. Therefore, that's why we are perhaps seeing hospitals make this not weird decision, but this difficult decision to figure out what exactly to do about a situation like that.
That's correct. The federal law actually does mention unborn children and that doctors are required to treat them as well. So it's a real conundrum that we'll hear.
In reading your report, which I urge our viewers to go find, I get a sense that HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, is a little reluctant to really penalize and press these hospitals unless or until the Supreme Court rules on this, right? Is that part of this?
Well, it takes a really long time.
But why? That's what I don't understand, too. I mean, if you're not treating someone and there's a potential financial penalty, it should be pretty cut and dry. You ask the hospital why they didn't do it. You issue the fine if they didn't, right?
Yeah, and it still takes years for the federal government to determine these fines, and they don't publicly release these complaints either. You have to fight to get those as well.
And that could be a fine of what, 5 figures, 6 figures, depending on the case?
They're hefty fines, and hospitals also are at risk for losing their Medicare funding if they violate EMTALA, which is, how a lot of hospitals make a lot of money. And so it's a real big threat to them to not follow this law. But as we've seen, it's also a real big threat to these doctors who might face criminal penalties if they do perform an abortion in some of these states.
Let alone a threat to the life of the women who walk in seeking the help and at least allegedly, aren't getting it. Amanda Seitz, incredible reporting, an important subject, and a really important case to watch at the Supreme Court tomorrow. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Ed.